and behold, when it arrived about a week before the wedding, it was completely different than what I was expecting. Hello and welcome to Cloud Color ASMR. This is a Cupped Whispering Storytime ASMR. I wanted to do a few story times, but I'm going to start chronologically, so I'm going to have to do a few different videos of each topic if you don't mind. I'm sure you don't. I'm hoping this video will be closer to an hour long because I love videos that are longer because then you know that you could fall asleep to it. Am I right? Who doesn't love a long, tingly, 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 tingly video? Tingly, 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 tingly video. This story time will be on the topic of how I planned my wedding in less than 1 month. Last year, I got married November 11th, 2023, to a man that I have been with for over a decade, 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 decade. But before I get into it, say hi to my kitty over here. If you can see him off to the side. Hi kitty, 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 kitty. Hi kitty, 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 kitty. Hello kitty, 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 kitty. Before I get into the story, I really meant to say hello and welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. And I hope you're doing okay. Please let me know in the comments how you're doing. I hope all of you are well. My cat is breathing so loudly over here, so hopefully it doesn't pick up on the mic. just didn't really pay attention to it much back then. Apparently, we both moved into Phoenix, Arizona as middle schoolers around the same time. So we both were a little bit of the outsiders when we went to the middle school that we were transferred to. At the time, though, I was 13 years old in 8th grade, and I was quite angry that we moved to a different state and had to leave behind all my best friends that I had grown up with. I was really angsty and kind of refused to make friends with anybody on a real serious level. I didn't want to attach myself to anybody, and especially not the boys. Especially not the boys, because I was a novelty when I transferred into the school. I was the only girl who had, let's say, the scene girl look. I had the scene girl mullet going on, where it was short at the top, short and choppy at the top, and then you had the long hair at the bottom. Yeah, that was me. And I had dark eyeliner and eyeshadow. Remember the raccoon eyes? Yeah, that was me. And I would wear my band t-shirts, my Screamo band t-shirts, and skinny jeans. And mind you, this school was a school where you had to wear all uniforms. So you had to wear khaki pants and a solid collared t-shirt, so red or blue or white, pretty much. But I would rebel and I would still wear what I wanted to wear, so I definitely stood out. I kind of just saw the whole school as a joke because they were still learning math that I had learned years ago, and there was nothing challenging me because the kids didn't take school seriously, and therefore we never really learned anything. And I had skipped a lot of school as well. At this time, I'm telling you, I just completely rebelled. I didn't like how the boys were treating me, and I just felt like, mostly just I couldn't get over the fact that my mom moved us to a different state, because originally I was raised in Las Vegas, Nevada. I had spent most of my younger years at this point, from about 4 years old till 13, so it was all I knew. It was all I knew. And literally, the best friends that I grew up with, I had been with them since 1st grade, and we would move up every grade together. I did end up going to different middle schools than some of them, but we still stayed in touch, and we were very close, so, naturally I was quite upset about the decision to move to nowhere, Arizona. At this time, the part of town that we lived in was still being developed, and there was a lot of cow factories, I don't know if they were dairy cows or what, but there's just a lot of cow fields, and it smelled just not happy all around. So one day, connecting the dots to my husband now, one day an acquaintance that I had made really early on one of my first few days at school, we were at lunch and she told me, "Hey, this boy Paul wants to talk to you." And I was like, oh boy, another one. Because they were all really nasty to me, like being really suggestive and stuff about me just because I was new and different. So when she said that, I was already like, no. But she like pulled me, she like grabbed my arm and pulled me over to where he was sitting and had me sit down next to him. And this was my now husband, Paul, but it was the 7th grader version of him. And I will say that he did look different than all the other boys. He was the only one with like an alternative fashion sense than anyone else. He had a faux hawk, and that's kind of the only thing that I looked at. And I sat down and looked at him and sized him up all in that one moment. And he said, "Hey." So eloquent, right? And I don't even think that I responded. I just stared at him with disgust, and I stood back up and I walked away and sat somewhere else by myself. It was so rude, but I already felt like he was being rude, and my friend, or acquaintance, was rude for forcing me into that situation when I was already so mad and disgusted by all the boys. So that was our first and only interaction in middle school. But you know what's hilarious? I think like a week later, I saw him walking around school for a brief moment, and he was holding hands with one of the girls in one of my classes. And I remember being kind of pissed, like, wow, you moved on so quick, didn't you? He had already found a new girl who, I guess, was more receptive to his hunting, let's say. And even though I completely shot him down, I still felt a little twinge of jealousy for whatever reason, and it made no sense. I remember questioning myself, like, I didn't even find him attractive, but here I am being jealous that he moved on. I quickly discarded that thought though and just moved on with my life. 2 or 3 years later, so I, of course, graduated onto high school, and I mentioned that because literally everyone in my grade level at that middle school was failing for one reason or another, either extremely bad grades or poor attendance, which was my case. I started missing a lot of school once we moved to Arizona. I just really didn't care anymore. And I'm telling you, some of these classes, some of like my reading and history classes, sometimes the kids would show up to class, but no teacher would show up. There wouldn't even be a substitute, and it would basically just became a free period with no guardian, no adult oversight at all. And this was a common occurrence. The school, I believe, was just really underfunded because of the area that it was in. So anyway, the whole 8th grade class was executive decision to just pass everyone and get us the heck out of there, because obviously there was not going to be any benefit to anybody repeating a grade when we're not even being taught anything of value at the school anyway. So I think that was a good call. Just get everyone moving on to high school and start fresh at a school that knows what they're doing and hopefully has the funding to actually teach these kids. So I'm gonna adjust real quick, hold on. My leg's falling asleep in that position. But let me adjust the mic down if I can. There we go. Okay, perfect. So, good call, I think, on their end. And I lucked out because I also was not supposed to pass due to my truancy. But they moved me on, thanks to the fact that everyone else was failing as well. So, fast forward 2 or 3 years, I was, I believe, a junior in high school. At least I was supposed to be. Remember how I told you that I kind of gave up on caring about school attendance at this point? Well, that pretty much continued throughout my high school career, if you want to call it that. When 9th grade started, I enrolled in a local school. Well, my mom enrolled me. And I showed up on the very first day and was really unimpressed. And decided that I wouldn't show up for like 3 months. My mom had no idea because she would leave to work before I was supposed to get up to go walk to the school bus. Or sometimes I think we woke up around the same time, but I didn't have to walk to the school bus until a little bit after she left. So I would get up and kind of make it look like I was gonna leave. But as soon as she left, I would just go back to bed. I would pretty much just pass out on the couch watching PBS every morning. And then on the 3 months after doing that, I decided that I wanted to go back to school to see a couple of my acquaintances from middle school who transferred to the same school. They would reach out to me on MySpace and be like, yo, when are you gonna come to school? So I decided, alright, fine, I'll go. And I guess I just thought that I would be able to fly under the radar amongst the many kids. But it turned out, of course, in my silliness, I didn't realize that I would be unenrolled if I just didn't show up. So they said, when I showed up, they were like, yeah, you're not enrolled at this school. And they sent me to the dean's office, or the counselor, I don't know. And they basically said, yeah, when you didn't show up for 3 months, we basically removed you from the registration. And they called my mom and let them know what happened. And so she finally learned about what I've been doing for the last 3 months. And she was pissed. Like, I didn't want to say that word because it's strong, but it's pretty accurate. She was livid with me that I had been doing that, making it look like I'd been going to school. And so, from that point on, she tried enrolling me in a couple other schools, and I pretty much did the same thing. Actually, I just never even showed up to them at all. I had never stepped a single foot on campus. So, once she realized that she was wasting her time enrolling me into different schools, we decided to go for an online school, and this is when online schools were really, really new, a new concept. They hadn't, they're nothing like they are now, or it was nothing like they are now, but there's basically no accountability. I kind of did the same thing where I would just like log in and I would kind of do it, but I would get bored and then I would just start playing MapleStory. So for like a year or two, I was really heavy into playing the online MMORPG game called MapleStory. 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 If you've ever played that game, respects. It was like my second life. I made a lot of friends online there that became my best friends during that time. Even had an online boyfriend when I was like 15, but I told him I was 18. Oops. My younger sister accidentally revealed the truth to him, and I remember I was very angry about that. Anyway, so after a year or two of this online school, I decided that I needed socialization again. And I, of my own volition, decided that I wanted to re-enroll back to that first high school that I was supposed to go to. And so I started as a junior, but because I didn't have enough credits, I actually had to do some of my core classes as a sophomore. So enter in my now husband. He was a sophomore, so I actually had a class or two with him because I was making up those credits. I was concurrently taking sophomore and junior classes, and thank God I was still really, really smart. That's why I would get bored so easily, because things would come pretty easily to me, thanks to God. I literally would be able to get taught something once, and then I'd be good on that. I would never study, never review anything. Yet I would be one of the highest scoring. I would score the highest on tests. Even the state tests that I took that year, I ranked at the very top percentage. In my PSATs, the practice SATs, and the ACTs, the counselor brought me in because I was the highest testing ACT scorer in my class that year, and they wanted to talk about my future because it seemed likely that I would be able to get into any college. Well, I don't want to say any college, but I had a high chance of doing something cool, I guess. But again, I didn't take anything seriously, which was a huge flaw that I had as a teenager. I was very reckless. It kind of blew a lot of my opportunities that I had back then. But anyway, this is not really about my childhood regrets. This is more so a background onto how I met and eventually married my husband. So I remember for sure I had, I think it was a sophomore English class with him. And that was how I first started to get to know him again. But what really got me interested in him, at least as a friend at this time, was what do you call it? It was a talent show that the school was putting on. And he entered in the talent show with some buddies of his. And he was playing guitar in that band so eventually I got over the resentment and we became friends. And we started hanging out and we started playing music together. And we started actually just developing this really tight-knit friendship group because we were all bonding over music and we were all really into classic rock at this time and getting and showing each other different musicians and artists that we loved and listening to a lot of indie bands. Around this time is when I discovered Beach House, the band, which is important because we actually used a Beach House song. I believe it's On the Sea or Irene, I can't remember. It's from the Bloom album, and we used that as one of our walkout ceremony songs at our wedding because Beach House had been the soundtrack to so many of our memories since we were kids. By the time I turned 18 or 19 is when we officially became a pair and we started dating. After some trial and error, of course, as kids, we were pretty dumb and made some pretty dumb mistakes, but at this point is when we became really serious around 2012. And then we eventually, when we had jobs and whatnot, we moved into an apartment together in 2013. 2015 is when we had our first child. So by the time we had little baby Jude, we had already had this really, really long history together of several years. And I had already basically been living with him at his parents' house my entire, teenage years up until we moved into our own apartment. They encouraged us to move out, and we did. I had already been saving up money and looking for a place, and it just kind of all worked out. But anyway, 2 years later, I got pregnant. We had Jude. 2 years after that, we had our daughter, Ame. And then 5 years after that, 6 years after that, we had our third child, Maple, who was just born at the end of 2023. So, I've never doubted the fact that we were totally, completely in love and committed to each other. So I would often already refer to him, even when we weren't legally married, I would still refer to him as my husband, and vice versa. He would refer to me as his wife, because it was really awkward to refer to each other as boyfriend and girlfriend when we already had this growing family. It almost would make it feel like we were not as committed as we were to refer to each other as that. So that was kind of the thinking behind it. And to be completely honest with you, I never, for years, most of our relationship, I never saw the value in us getting legally married. I couldn't see what it would change, what benefit we would get from doing that, because as a child, I didn't see very many good examples of a long-lasting, beautiful marriage at this point. When I was a child, I'd actually seen really tragic and disastrous relationships, so in my mind, I never wanted to get married. Actually, I never even saw my life getting to the point where I would have children or be any kind was my worst nightmare when I was a teenager and a young adult. I very much subscribe to like the new age feminist, borderline man-hating culture. And yeah, so it's kind of crazy that this story ends in me embracing all of that, all of the things that I thought I hated. But I'll like go ahead and explain a little bit more about how that all changed for me. Of course, there was no doubt that I was madly in love with my boyfriend at the time when we had moved in together. I remember thinking to myself that how beautiful and wild it was that I felt like I was falling more and more in love with him every single day. And I still feel that way. And he would tell me the same thing. When we moved in together, he even expressed to me that he wanted to marry me. So this was not his fault. The reason we weren't married sooner is not because he didn't want to. It's not because he didn't try to put a ring on my finger, trust me. It was because I was afraid and I was turned off by the idea, and I never saw the value in it. I thought everything's fine the way it is, why ruin it, is kind of where I was coming from. Again, mostly because the examples that I had grown up with were not the best examples. So, and I even told people around me since teenagerdom, adolescence, I guess I should say. I would tell my friends that I never wanted to get married and I never wanted kids because I came from a big family of 6 siblings. Well, I was one of 6 siblings, and my mom was always struggling as a single mom, and we never had an abundance of finances, so I saw like kids as a burden and as a struggle, and I just had these really, what's the word, negative perspectives of motherhood and marriage and relationships in general, I think. And because, again, my father was not in the picture, he, got my mom pregnant all these times, and yet he still was not a good example of a dad. He was really terrible, actually. I won't go too much into it because it's not something necessarily that bothers me. Quite honestly, I never really knew the man. He would show up at, periodically throughout our childhood and pretend that he was a father, but he really wasn't anything more than, the man that was responsible for my birth. And that was kind of it. Eventually he passed away when I was still quite young, so again, I never really had the chance to know him enough, and so again, not good examples of men in my life. because once we got serious and we moved in together and we spent, so much time together, and our love really, truly just grew and flourished from that point on. We would start talking about kids and what if we had kids, and we both were in agreement that we wouldn't mind because they would be little versions of us, and we were so in love with each other that how could that be a bad thing, So I think it was good that we talked about that pretty early on once we moved in together, because 2 short years later we got pregnant, and it allowed us to embrace those new roles of parenthood so much easier and seamlessly than I think if we didn't know where we both stood on it. Yeah, so all of that to kind of explain that he wanted to marry me. One time we were driving in the car and he was talking about how much he loved me and how he would marry me. And we were at a stop sign, and he looked at me in the eyes and said, "I would marry you right now. I would go to the court and go get married at the court right now." And little 18 or 19-year-old me, whatever I was caught off guard and feeling really shy at his very bold declaration of his love for me. And while it made me uncomfortable and I kind of pushed the idea away, I was still very pleased inside because he really was trying to show me just how much he loved me and how serious he was. How serious he was. It was beautiful, but again, I was still uncomfortable with the idea. Now, what changed my mind, do you ask? Because having children didn't change my mind. We had baby Jude in 2015, and that didn't change my mind. I still was perfectly fine with the arrangement that we had. We had Ame in 2017, and I was still fine. We had been together at that point. Well, if you want to count from the year that we moved in together into our first apartment, 2013. So 4 years into our serious commitment, and I still, 2 kids later, and I still was fine with the unmarried status. Now, cut to 2021. This is the year that I found out that Jesus is actually really, truly real. I thought religion and I thought Jesus was nothing more than a made-up story. Something that people used as a crutch to make them feel more comfortable with the morality, their morality, and with, not morality, mortality, with the finite quality of our lives. That's kind of where I was at. I was a full-on church because I had been failed by your run-of-the-mill churches, Christian churches before, which is what pushed me into atheism. But this was different. I now had a relationship with God, a direct relationship, not a religion. I didn't do things because I had to. I did things because I wanted to, and I finally understood the difference. So, God slowly started working on my heart. He started working on my mind and my opinions and so many things. So many things. And one of the main ones, of course, was how I view myself, my identity in Christ as a mother and as a wife. And I started finding ways to stop sinning, to stop, to, not really to stop, but to be in obedience to His commandments because I wanted to, not because I felt like I had to. God had so much grace for me during this time because I was absolutely not in His will and absolutely not the perfect Christian, and I'm still not, but I really think He had so much grace because He knew that I was not a Christian when I entered into the relationship with my husband. We're unmarried and we had kids out of wedlock, but I think I never felt any condemnation or judgment from God. I just felt that He understood and was being reasonable because He knew that I didn't know what I was doing back then, like I know now. I didn't have a relationship with Him yet, and I didn't know that His words mattered in my life, so I knew eventually that we were gonna get married. I just didn't know how, I didn't know when, and in 2023, by this point I'd made, so I got saved in 2021, so 2 years had passed, and I'd been telling my husband like where I was at spiritually, and he knew that I wanted us to get married, so he really went for it and proposed, and we knew like it was my goal, and I'd been praying for us to get married in 2023, especially when I found out that I was pregnant with my third most recent child. What was it? We found out at the end of March, I think, that I was pregnant. I just felt very convicted in my heart that we should get married before the baby is born, because I believe that there are spiritual benefits to having children that are born to parents who are in obedience to God's word. So that was really important to me, and but again, I felt so sick at the beginning of my pregnancy and really didn't start feeling better towards the very end, so I did nothing to plan, I did nothing to prepare, I didn't know who we were inviting, I didn't know who, like, even when we were gonna get married, or if we were gonna be able to do it before the end of the year. So cut to like September, 2 months before we got married, I started getting really serious about it and researching venues and that kind of thing. And I realized how expensive wedding venues really are. Oh my god. Cost an arm and a leg. And I'm like, I'd rather spend this money and put it towards like a down payment for a house or something more long lasting. I didn't see the value in throwing down tens of thousands for just one day. Now, don't get me wrong, if you have the means to throw a wedding like that, like you've been saving the money, or you make enough money that it makes sense, by all means, like, I'm not judging you. Or if it's been your dream to always have this, huge wasn't particularly tied to any kind of huge, like, over the topness. The only thing that I did know that I wanted is I wanted us to be in, like, the traditional clothing. I wanted my husband to look handsome in a tuxedo, and I wanted to look beautiful and classic in an elegant wedding dress. And I wanted there to be professional pictures taken so we would have the memories forever. And I knew, sorry, and I knew that I wanted our closest friends and family in the intimate wedding, wherever the setting was, to be witnesses to the wedding. I've had two, well, okay, one of my older sisters got married like the couple years prior to us, and they had a courthouse wedding, and we didn't get to be there or anything because they live in Boston, and they just went ahead and did it one day, and so we didn't really get to be a part of that day. And then I think the next year, my brother-in-law, which is Paul's younger brother, got married also at the courthouse, which we did get to be there, but I just knew at that point, like, okay, I don't want to do the same thing. Like, I want to have a wedding, even if it's tiny. I want to have that beautiful memory for everyone and for myself. So that was my only criteria, and I truly thought we were gonna end up having the wedding in someone's backyard or whatever, and I had been exploring that possibility, but I hadn't really come up with anything concrete or solidified. And so cut to October, we're getting close to my due date. We're getting close to the end of the year. My due date was December 1st, and so we're in October, and my husband's like, okay, look, I'm gonna reach out to this music venue that he works at a lot. He's like, I'm gonna reach out to the owner, and I'm gonna see if they would be willing to let us have our wedding there. And the owner of the venue ends up being like, heck yeah, have your wedding here. We'll waive the rental fee. The wedding, like the venue rental fee, all you have to pay for is the labor for the people, for workers to be there, and for the catering, if we're gonna do catering. So again, this was about, sorry for the out of focusness, I don't know what's going on with the focus. There we go, we're coming back. Okay, so we're like, heck yeah, let's do it at this venue, and it's a really cute venue. The inside, the main ballroom of the venue has these string lights crisscrossed on the ceiling. It's got exposed wooden beams and whatnot. And so we pretty much decided, like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. And we were actually 3 weeks out from the date that they gave us, which was November 11th. We didn't even really pick the date. That was just the only date that they had on their schedule that would work for November, because again, if we were gonna get married before I had this baby, it was gonna have to be in November, early to mid-November, because I was due December 1st, okay? And we were taking a chance that I might have the baby before the wedding, or we would even joke that I might go into labor at the wedding. So yeah, about 3 weeks out, we start planning the wedding super seriously. Trying to figure out who are we inviting. I thought it was gonna be really intimate. I was thinking no more than 50 people, but in reality, I would have been okay with 15 people or less. But husband wanted to invite like everyone he knew, so we ended up with this list of 100, and that was with the list whittled down. My list was like 10 people long, and his was the majority of the list, but you know, he really, he was just so excited, honestly. I think he's, if we're being honest, he's more of a romantic than I am, and he just wanted everyone there, all his friends, all his family, and he, to be fair, he does have a much bigger family than I do. So we went ahead and invited this list of 100, but thankfully only about 50 people RSVP'd, like less than 50, and we figured out the catering, we figured out kind of like what, well, I started this spreadsheet because I quickly realized that if I was gonna stay organized and plan, you know, get all the details figured out, I was gonna need a spreadsheet. And my husband, he was very busy with work at this time because I had not been working. You know, I was pregnant, very pregnant, and definitely not working, so he understandably had to take a step back once we figured out where we were going to be having the wedding. And I took over the details, like, of the decor, which we kept very minimal, very, very minimal, because again, I didn't need all the bells and whistles. I just wanted it to look like a wedding, very basic wedding. And I'm so grateful that so many of my friends and family jumped on board to help. Like, my mom bought the wedding cake, and my in-laws paid for the catering and some of the open bar. And my sister in Christ, aka my aunt-in-law, Kalila, she's kind of been on my faith journey with me, actually. We both kind of came to Jesus at the same time. It's really beautiful. Story for another time, but she offered to pay for my wedding dress even, which I truly just felt at that point just so beyond spoiled, man. Like, I had bought a wedding dress online on eBay, a maternity wedding dress that I thought looked so beautiful in the pictures, but lo and behold, when it arrived about a week before the wedding, it was completely different than what I was expecting. It was disgusting, and I realized that I would not be able to have it altered affordably because in reality it's just the entire, every single dimension of the dress needed to be changed, and even some of the materials of the dress just weren't even matching the picture. So I decided to return it after I talked to Kalila, the one who bought my dress. I talked to her and she was like, "Oh dear Lord, no, like, I can't believe you bought it on eBay. You might as well have bought it on Craigslist." She's like, "No, like, this is what we're gonna do. We only have a week to the wedding, so tomorrow I need you to call David's Bridal and book us a session, and we need to pray and hope that they have something that fits you and that you like." And so I was like, "Say no more, fam. Let's do it," because I had really no other options at that point. Yeah, because our budget was really small. These blessings that were bestowed upon us by family and friends really, really made a huge difference. Another help that we had was the photography. And the what do you call it? The ordained minister that marries us. officiator. But anyway, he has a photography business. He's a photographer, and he also runs a wedding booth, a wedding photo booth that he rents out for weddings. It's this really cute, old school looking like box where he's got the camera inside and he sets up the backdrop and he takes these really pretty black and white photos and then prints them on the spot. And it prints, I think, three different photos that you take, and then you can print out as many as you want. And I'll have to show you guys. Maybe I'll pop one up on the screen if you're still awake. You shouldn't be, but okay, fine. It's okay if you're still awake. If you made it this far, I want you to comment with some kind of wedding type emoji, okay? But hopefully you guys are sleeping at this point, and that you're finding it relaxing, this little cupped whisper ramble. So yeah, he actually offered to do the photography and bring his wedding booth free of charge, which we didn't even ask him to do that, but he just offered and just kind of showed up with everything. To my surprise, I was actually blown away when I came out of the green room after the ceremony and saw that he had the photo booth set up and everybody was having so much fun taking all these group photos. It was so perfect. And he actually asked a friend of his to come to the wedding to help with the professional photography that he had taken throughout the day. So just amazing blessings. We definitely took out everyone that helped us. We found ways to thank them in their own way, whether it was taking them out for brunch afterward or giving special gifts. We were so grateful. I'm trying to think of who else helped, because I don't want to miss anybody, but I think that was the main hitters. Oh yeah, my best friend Steph was my bridesmaid, and she actually did our hair. So she gave Paul and the kids haircuts the night before the wedding, and then she styled my hair, and Ame's hair was the flower girl, of course, at the wedding. So that she's a hairstylist, so that was a huge help as well. I decided, of course, that I was gonna do my own makeup because I was not about to hire like a makeup artist or whatever. And yeah, so I was in charge. I'm jumping ahead, but let me go back to like the week before the wedding. So we also had planned, because my husband and I are both musicians, and I wrote these 2 songs specifically for us to perform at the wedding. So when we were coordinating with the event coordinator at the venue that we were gonna have the wedding at, the original plan that we had committed to was that immediately after the ceremony, we would change over the stage for us to do a small acoustic performance. Paul would be on the acoustic guitar, and I would be singing. And like I said, I wrote these 2 wedding songs that I will definitely have to sing ASMR versions for you guys one of these days. And I was in love with them. And I had Paul learn the guitar parts because I wrote it originally on guitar. And then we actually had practice sessions to practice for the performance, and we were just gonna have a small, like 15-minute set, because we were gonna also play a couple covers. But here's what happened. So I mentioned how, my original wedding dress idea from eBay didn't pan out. Well, me and Kalila, we did end up going to David's bridal, and we did end up finding the dress of my dreams. And so sick. Like, it took me 30 minutes to drive home, and by the time that I parked at home and got inside, like, I had a full-blown fever, and I was feeling like crap. And it's crazy because, again, this was like exactly a week before the wedding had been scheduled, and my husband and I actually, we got into a pretty heated argument that night before. So the morning that I went to the fitting, I was not in a good mood. Like, I low-key didn't even want to be there. Like, I was so upset. Like, I kind of even wanted to just like throw in the towel on the whole wedding, even though I knew I was being super dramatic about that. But because I got home and I was so sick and so pregnant, like, it literally like was the perfect thing to just throw that whole argument out the window. Like, he's my husband, well, fiance at the time, just was like, oh my god, like, he apologized to me right away for everything that he had said, and I apologized for everything I had said, and he was just like so sad to see me so sick, and just immediately jumped into the doting on me, taking care of me. And I literally, I was just hoping and praying that I would be better by the wedding, because the countdown was on. I didn't want to be so sick that we would have to reschedule everything, because at that point, if we had to reschedule it, like, we pretty much would probably just have to wait till the next year, like, till after the baby was old enough for us to even think about that, you know? And I really, really had my heart set on being pregnant during that wedding, so it was really like scary, because for whatever reason, this sickness hit me really hard. Well, because I was pregnant, I'm sure, but it got to this point where for 3 days I could not keep down a single piece of food, a single drop of water, or any kind of fluids. Like, I don't know why my stomach got so messed up, but I could not keep anything down, and you know, that's not good, like, for anybody, but especially for a 9 months pregnant woman, where I need more hydration than the average person, you know what I mean? Like, you know, when you're pregnant, like, you become starving, like, every 2 hours. Like, hunger when you're pregnant is not normal hunger, it is extreme. And so I had been in this routine where I had to eat like a very protein heavy meal every 2 hours, or I would feel sick, like the morning sickness would come. So for me to not eat anything, a single thing, for 3 days, and anytime I tried to eat, like, keep down oatmeal, I tried to keep down soup, I tried to keep down a little bit of water, a little bit of coconut water, like, I was throwing it all up, plus all of my stomach acid. So my throat, like, had become so burned from all the acid that I'd been throwing up all those days, and I was so physically weak and tired, and it honestly was like, I was getting to this point where I was questioning at what point should I check myself into a hospital. And so it was like, I remember even on like Wednesday, I was still feeling this way, and our wedding was on that Saturday. So everyone, our family, was kind of questioning, like, are we gonna postpone this? Like, what's going on? But I had my heart set on having this wedding, so what I ended up doing is hiring a mobile IV service to come to the house, and they hooked me up to an IV and gave me fluids through intravenously. And one thing about me is I do not like needles, so the fact that I was even willing to go with this option with the IV service really truly meant that I needed it. I was desperate, so when they came, I felt so much better, because that had been the first hydration anything that I've had in those 3 days, from Monday, Wednesday, was barely there, but you know, thank God I was gonna have a wedding. So I actually hired the mobile IV service to come immediately after my ceremony and come into the green room at the venue to give me another final dose of fluids just to help me have a fighting chance of being able to survive my wedding. And actually the very first meal, like real meal that I had all week was my reception food that they catered. The venue is also a restaurant, so we had them also cater the food, which is delicious. And that was my first meal the whole time that I've been sick. And thankfully the fluids helped a ton in even allowing me to have an appetite that day. But yeah, my son was the ring bearer, which it was so cute. He took that role very seriously, and he even asked me, I think like a few days before the wedding, I had this little fake ring that I would wear like on my pinky sometimes, and he found it, and he was like, "Is this my responsibility to keep safe too?" Like he was kind of confused, like, am I responsible for all rings or just your wedding ring? So cute. He's taking it very seriously. And my daughter was a flower girl, and actually, like, aside from God obviously allowing this to happen, like the whole wedding to happen and everything to pull together so quickly in 3 weeks, my daughter is really like the main reason that this happened, because like a month before the wedding, or like 2 months before, in September, right when we started like more seriously thinking about where we're gonna have the wedding, we went to this kids consignment slash thrift store, and she found her wedding dress on a rack. It was this really pretty white girl's dress, like her size and everything, with a big white bow and these flower lace details. And when she saw it, she was like, "This is gonna be the dress I wear at mommy and daddy's wedding." And she would not let us leave without that dress. I even tried to talk her out of it, like, "Well, mama's like, this dress might not fit you by the time mommy and daddy finally get married," because I had no idea if we were gonna be able to do it that year or not. Like it was barely a thought at that time. But she was very insistent, like, "I need this dress," so we ended up getting it. And when I, came home and I showed my fiance the dress and explained the story, that's actually what made us be like, alright, well that means we need to get married before our daughter outgrows this dress. And it already fit her perfectly, and if you have kids or no kids, you know that they will hit a growth spurt like that. Like in 1 year they can be completely different size. So the countdown was kind of on at that point, and that's really what was like the catalyst for us to start getting serious about, alright, if we're gonna have this wedding, like we need to start planning it now. We need to like start taking some serious steps. And so really it was all thanks to her. So she was the flower girl. She was so excited to wear this dress. She would ask me every day if she could wear the dress before the wedding, but we made a deal. I was like, "Look, we need to keep your dress clean until the wedding, but after the wedding, like all bets are off. Like this is your dress at that point, and you can wear this dress as much as you want, wherever you want. Like it won't matter at that point. But we just need to keep this dress. We just need to keep the dress clean and safe until then, okay?" And yeah, so anyway, the wedding, literally, like it was just so perfect, like for everything to be so last minute, so low budget. It was just it was everything it needed to be. It was perfect. Sorry, got these hiccups all of a sudden. was so us, like having it at this music venue that we've been to since we were adolescents. Like, I can't tell you how many amazing musicians that we've seen perform at this venue. So it actually ended up being like so perfect and beautiful and poetic, downright poetic, that we ended up getting married here. And I was so happy that our two children, Jude is 8 now and Ame is 6 now, so they will have this memory for the rest of their lives of their parents getting married and they getting to be a part of the processional and everything. I ended up picking 2 bridesmaids for the wedding because I actually didn't think we were gonna do that we were gonna do groomsmen or bridesmaids because of how small the wedding was gonna be and how last minute. But all of a sudden, Paul was talking about having his only two brothers as his groomsmen, and I'm like, well, okay, I guess I gotta pick 2 bridesmaids, right, to make it even. And it didn't take me long to think of 2 people that I wouldn't want more to be my bridesmaids, and one of them is my sister in Christ, Kalila, the one that helped me buy the wedding dress. She's truly been like a sister to me, but even taken to a whole new level once we both found Christ around the same time. She's been the one that I've been able to kind of like share all my revelations with and, celebrate salvation with me truly. And then my best friend, who's been my best friend since high school, Stephanie, she also became a mother at a young age, so I think that helped us greatly in sticking like in each other's lives for so long. And the reason why I felt like these 2 were really the ones to be my bridesmaids is because when I think of like, or when I ask myself who in my life would never tear me down, who always speaks life into me, who always has the highest expectations and highest opinion of me, and never dare just to talk down to me or any of that. They're the only 2, well, I wouldn't say the only 2, but they are the main 2 that immediately come to mind, that I had no doubt that those are the right bridesmaids. And so I asked them both via text, and they both immediately were like, yes, totally, of course. And I made these handmade journals, which I'll have to show you guys one day. These really cute handmade notebook planners that I made from scratch, and I spiral bound them, and I made them personal. I printed out these really cute pages with their name on it and everything, and I put this really cute wedding bow, I used some wedding ribbon that I used for some of the decor. I used it to tie bows onto their notebooks, and then I also, in the gift bag, I bought these personalized compact mirrors, cosmetic mirrors with their names on them, on Etsy. I actually bought 3 of them. I bought for the 2 bridesmaids and then one for my flower girl daughter, because she loves makeup and she loves girly stuff, so I knew I had to get her one too. I also bought all 3 of them a customized jewelry box with their names on it as well, and it matched. It had similar colors to the little mirror. So those were the 3 gifts, very small, quite honestly, affordable gifts, but I knew I had to include them in the budget somehow, because I really needed to thank them for being a part of my special day and for all the help that they did. Seriously, those 2 women are a force of nature. They made sure everything happened. They made sure that I ate at the wedding. They made sure that I didn't forget which both of us like didn't really like. We waited to the last minute because I was sick. Like so much of what I had planned to do the last week got condensed to like the last day or like the morning off because I was so sick. So we wrote our own vows. They were beautiful. Paul was really emotional. I actually had the veil over my face. Like I had these very specific wishes about how I wanted to look and like how I wanted the ceremony to go. And of course I wanted to be in the traditional dress and the veil, and I wanted the veil over my face, and I wanted him to like unveil me at the altar. So that was really cute and really special. I have a few pictures from my sister-in-law who was in the like audience or whatever. She took some pictures for us, which I appreciate. I did vlog a lot of the wedding process as well as like the wedding itself, but I did not get any footage of the actual ceremony, which I'm sad about. But because I was so sick, I literally threw out everything out the window. But my two bridesmaids really helped vlog as much as they could at the wedding, and they are really why I have so much footage that I do that I can't wait to edit. So yeah, it was a really, really crazy lead up to the wedding. I mean, 3 weeks is not a lot of time to plan a wedding for 50 people, and I still feel like it was relatively small. It was bigger than what I initially tried to plan, but it was still a pretty small, intimate wedding, I would say. And even so, there was a lot of details to figure out. And like I said, I kept things very, very minimal. Like when I mentioned that I was taking care of the decor in the couple weeks prior to the wedding, like I kept it very, very minimal. Our theme was these really pretty, like purplish, bluish, almost black flowers. I want to say they look like a rose. It was a fake flower that I bought at Hobby Lobby, but my husband really loved that color, and I fell in love with it too because it was so striking. So we had that as an accent, and then the main like colors were like these white flowers, and then just like greenery as accents, like green leaves. Because my original is just like this garden arch that she bought at Hobby Lobby, and put this drapery, this white drapery over it. Now we were supposed to put florals on it, but I didn't realize that we had the florals for it, so it went bare, but I think it still was perfect because it looked really minimalistic. It looked like we intended it to be that way. I didn't actually see it a single time until I walked up the aisle at my wedding for the ceremony. And yeah, I thought it was perfect. And we also, the black flowers, I made a corsage for my husband to put on his blazer, and it had a perfect, like, equally sized little black rose and a little white rose and a little green foliage detail, and literally it's like about this big. I want to show you guys. I'll be right back. I'll show you. So this is what it looks like. This was the color scheme for the wedding. So like I said, I originally just wanted to do like a very elegant, simple, classic white flower with some green foliage, whatever it may be. But then we added on last minute this really beautiful, like, dark blue, almost dark purple, but from afar it looks black or navy blue, but it's so pretty. And so this was the corsage. This was the corsage on my husband's lapel, or whatever you want to know. Lapel is down here, isn't it? It was on his blazer of his tuxedo. So cute. I actually have this like sitting up on a shelf, so we see it every day in the kitchen now. I don't have my wedding ring on right now because I already took it off for bedtime. It's really late right now, so if you're wondering. And we had bigger versions of that really beautiful blackish flower just laying down at the altar, in front of, like, at the edge of the stage where we went up to say our I do's. So again, just super simple. And then, like I said, this venue has a restaurant portion, and so the reception area was like the dining area, and I had a lot of extra, like, fake foliage of the same theme that I just showed you, and I literally just kind of like handed it all over to the staff and to my officiator. I kind of gave like a brief outline of what I hoped to achieve with the decor, but they just completely took it over at that point. They handled it, and so I didn't see the final product until after the ceremony. And after I went into the green room with my husband, we both got the IV treatment. The mobile IV lady actually mentioned that this was like not the first wedding that she's been to administer the IVs, which I was very surprised. I asked her, I'm like, is this weird that I'm having you here right after my wedding? And she was like, no. She's like, happens all the time. I'm like, that's crazy. She was so cool, and we were just chatting it up, and my husband decided, you know what, I think I want to get one too. And she has all the supplies, so she's like, alright, cool, yeah, I'll set you up. And then she ended up doing it for free for him as a what's the word, like, as a gift to us. So we got two for the price of one, which was really cool. And she added on all these extra like vitamins and stuff so that he would feel extra good, like boosted up for the wedding, which was good because he did drink a little bit. He celebrated. I obviously was pregnant and didn't get to, so not that I would have drank anyway. I'm not really a drinker, but yeah. So, and then it was funny because while we were getting our IVs, my midwife, who was there for my first 2 home births and was obviously planning to help me with my 3rd home birth, said our vows during the ceremony. I actually prefaced with, like, I think I said something like, please bear with me because I'm gonna try to get through this without coughing, because I was like losing my voice and I kept coughing, but by the grace of God, I got through my entire vow without coughing a single time, so it was fine. Like, the preface was completely unnecessary. And oh, so remember I said we were practicing to do a small performance as newlyweds. Well, obviously I was losing my voice, so we had to back out of that and not do it at all. Like, by the end of the night, I had no voice because everybody was trying to talk to me, and both at the ceremony and at the after party that we had at Paul's parents' place, like, it was so loud with music that I was like kind of having to yell just for people to hear me. And so yeah, it was a mistake because my voice was completely shot. I think that's pretty much it about the wedding. So I mean, we really, the only way we were able to make it happen in 3 weeks was by one, keeping everything super simple. Like, literally, plan for the bare minimum. Like, we're gonna have nice outfits, we're gonna invite the people we love, we're gonna have food, and we're gonna have our best friend, from high school to officiate us, and we're spending as little money as possible, and DIYing, like, all the minimalistic decor. Like, that is how we made it happen, because we kept it very simple. This was not extravagant by any means, but with our people pulling together for us financially and physically, like, with just the labor that it took to set up the wedding, and yeah, and just keeping it super simple was the key, and staying organized with a spreadsheet. I printed it out the night before the wedding and started checking things off and writing things, and that kept me so organized throughout the process. And it had like a list of every single item that I needed to bring to the wedding, so that was good. And what was I gonna say? I had planned to say something to wrap this up. Well, let me just think what else about the wedding. Guys, I don't know. I literally, like, I was just living on a high for like the entire month after the wedding, just like revisiting the pictures and the photos and those are the same thing, the pictures and the videos, and like everyone's kind words about it, and just reliving the moment, because even though I was so sick, I was so happy. Like, everything was literally just perfect, okay? Like, nothing could ruin my day because I was just so happy that it was happening at all. Despite being so, like, deathly ill the week prior, it was really a journey of highs and lows. And thank God the baby stayed in my belly for the wedding. 2 weeks after the wedding, I had the baby, December 1st. So, we really made it happen when we needed it to. And now we have a really cool date of 11/11, which, like I said, was not planned, but it's beautiful. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. It was so fun, and it really just got all pulled together by the grace of God. So I feel like I'm missing some details. Maybe I didn't finish like a certain rant that I went on, but I think that's it for now. I'm gonna end the video here. The next Whispered Ramble story time that I do is gonna be the birth story of my little Maple, who was born 2 weeks after the wedding. Like I mentioned, this was my my third home